Hi and welcome to this video in the MRDCL Fundamentals series, and in this video we're going to be looking at different types of multiple response variables that you might want to define. Now when you're working with ASCII data particularly, there's a number of ways that multiple response variables or data might be stored, and so we're going to look at some of the main ways that might be achieved. So if we look at some ASCII data that I've got here, we're going to look at how the same data is quite commonly stored in different ways. So if I just talk you through this, you'll understand what we're going to try and script here in MRDCL to pick up these different ways of representing multiple response data. So this data here is going to relate to 5 brands. We'll call them brand A to brand E. And this respondent here has a 1 in each consecutive column representing each of the brands. So this 1 here that I'm highlighting now refers to brand A. This is brand B, brand C, brand D and brand A. And that data is stored in the 11th to 15th fields of the data. So we can say that 11 code 1 means brand A has been selected through to 15 code 1 where brand E has been selected. And if I move down to the next record here, you can see that this is brand A, brand B wasn't selected, brand C is selected, brand D isn't, and brand E is selected. So that's one way that's commonly used for storing multiple response data, by indicating a 1 is true in that brand or that particular code has been selected, and blank or sometimes 0 is put in its place, and occasionally 2 to indicate that the brand hasn't been, or the code hasn't been selected. Now another way of storing multiple response data that's commonly used is what we call a spread field, and there over a series of columns the answers are stored. Now they've been stored as 2 digits on this particular occasion, but they could be 1 digit or 3 digits, but I've just made them 2 digits here so that you can just see a little bit more scope within the syntax. And what this one here means exactly the same as before. This one has picked up 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 as, if you like, a spread field which is 2 columns wide but repeated 5 times. And so this spread field will be as wide as the maximum number of responses that can be expected. And that's a very good way if you've got a very big code list of storing multiple response data, because let's say there's choosing makes and models of cars, there might be 900 makes and models of cars, and perhaps any respondent might only select 3 cars that they prefer, for example, or 3 models they prefer, and so you're actually storing quite a small amount of data for a large from a large list. The record below is picking up brands 3, 5 and 1, or 1, 3 and 5, but it's picked them up in any order. It will work the same. So the fact they picked up 5, 3 and 1, that might be the order they were chosen, but it could just be any order. It would be the same as far as picking up the multi-response variable as 01, 03, 05. This one here has picked up brand 4 and 5, in other words brand D and E, and this one's just picked up brand 1. So that's a second way of representing multi-response data that's commonly used, where the codes are spread across multiple fields, if you like, and hence its name, a spread field. And this is another way where this is possibly a bit more specific, where someone is recording the answers that selections have been made. So this data here might mean this, you might think of this in terms of preferences or order of choosing. So this respondent here may have chosen brand 1, then 3, then 4, then 2, then 5. Across those 5 selections, they picked all of them, but they've just been coded as 1, 3, 2, 4 and 5. And again, the same sort of thing has been done for the respondents 2, 3 and 4. Let's now look at the script that you need to pick up these different varieties of variables. So if we open up our script, you can see what I'm doing now. So the first variable we had, if we just flick back to the data here, you can see was the 1s across the fields 11 to 15. So if we look at that now, you can see that one way of defining that would be, and I've commented this out here, would be to say that variable Q1 is 11 code 1, 12 code 1, 13 code 1, and 14 code 1, and 15 code 1. That's fine, that would work absolutely fine. You could put these codes in a loop to make it slightly shorter, but this actually means the same. If you define a multi as Q1 equals $11 to 15, that automatically implies that you're picking up the code 1s for that block of 5 columns, just like the line above. So that's one way of doing what we want. And then we've got the labels and the title here. Then we come to the second block of fields. So let's look at the data in those block of fields here now. Again, so just to remind us, this has been picked up with what we call a spread field. So these are 2 digits wide, but they're repeated 5 times. And we're just picking up any of the answers that are given in that spread field. If we look at the script now, you'll see that what we specify here, this data was in 21 to 30, so in 5 lots of 2 columns. What you do here in MRDCL is you specify the first block. So you say it starts in 21 to 22. So the first of those fields, go back to the data here, these ones here are in 21 to 22. And I want to repeat that 5 times, picking up the codes 1 to 5. So it effectively is going to group together all those 5 blocks of 2 digits to give you one variable called Q2, and your resultant variable will be effectively the same results as we got in question 1. Now the final example was the one where we're looking at storing perhaps choices in an order or preferences. So here I've actually, in a fairly long-handed way, I've said that the Q3(1_1) is 41 1 to 5, Q32 is 42, 43, 44, 45, and then they've been ORed together to make the final multivariable that you want if you want to pick up all selections or all choices. So the syntax here just says that Q3 is Q3_1 ... Q3_2 3 and 5, so that you get the variable with all the choices. So that's a slightly longer way of doing it, although it's giving you the benefit of a set of variables up here that you could tabulate, which is picking the order of choices. So that has something slightly different application to the previous two and has a little bit more detail than you were perhaps collecting in the other examples. And finally, another way of doing the same thing with that data, and we've called this variable Q3x, but it's doing exactly the same thing, is to use ORDEFINE, which means that it's basically going to add in each of the answers that are found in the fields 41, 42, 43, 44 and 45. And that's another tool that you can use, which is doing exactly the same as the code above to make Q3 there. So it's a slightly shorthand way of specifying what we got above in Q3. So that probably gives you most of the things that you're going to do with multiple response data from ASCII in ASCII data. You do sometimes have other forms of data that you might come across where you have binary data. Now, users who don't ever use binary data really don't need to know this, but you can have column binary data where multiple response answers are valid on one field. So you might have data where, for example, on field 12, there was multi-coding allowed, and the data would be encoded in a binary format so that you could read that, and then you could just read the codes off like a single variable effectively there. But that really only applies to binary data and wouldn't apply to ASCII data. So that completes this video. I hope it was useful to you. Thank you.